Indeed, we did. It's the dawn of a new age. Speaking of new, I've been thinking of renaming this thing. He considered his sword anew, still on the table. Widow's Wail is an ugly name. I don't like it. It's unworthy of such a beautiful blade. Dany arched a brow at him. Should I be jealous? Not at all. You're far prettier. He took her jest for what it was and kissed her cheek. Any ideas for names? She wrinkled her nose at him. Blackfire would be in poor taste, I'd say. It did. He racked his mind for a name, considering. One came to him out of the blue. Windweaver. Daenerys made a pleased noise. A fine name. It certainly was, rolled right off the tongue. Windweaver it was. Only then did he notice her pensive expression, the way she squirmed under his gaze. Something's bothering you. Drogon's been restless. She stood, paced past him, and looked to the window. It's his wound. He's not been able to fly since he took that scorpion bolt to the shoulder. I'm afraid he may need more time to recover. Pity stirred within him as he tugged his doublet back on. Was it really worth leaving the poor boy to suffer just so they could have some time to themselves? He already knew the answer. No, it was not. I can take a look at it if you like. She frowned at him. What can you possibly do that hasn't already been done? He winked at her, utterly without fear. More than you think. 0. Daenerys brought him out to the fields in short order. Aegon wheeled overhead as soldiers drilled with their weapons below, soaring through the sky with lazy grace. But not Drogon. Her child watched mournfully as his cousins soared through the clouds, making not a sound. He didn't have to. She could feel his pain from here, his sadness, his sorrow, his anger. He was hurt, and he did not understand why he couldn't fly. None dared come this close to him when he was in such a mood. That was a bit of a blessing in disguise, she supposed. They need not fear spies or wagging tongues here, and could thus speak unimpeded in relative peace. It also meant few could get near her dearie boy without being eaten alive. He'd even been snappish towards her as of late. Aegon approached Drogon at a lazy gait, careful not to make any sudden moves, with her only a step behind. In the end, he needn't have bothered. The black dragon knew him by scent now, and trilled softly, letting him approach. Her intended muttered something in High Valyrian, and Drogon crouched down in response, presenting him with the ugly wound on his shoulder. Daenerys found herself at something of a loss. What did he intend to do? Use a poultice or some such? She didn't see any supplies on his personage, so Aegon laid a marked palm on Drogon's wound and closed his eyes. The black dragon hissed angrily at him for it, a warbling cry of purest pain. I know, he crooned back. This'll sting a little, but you'll be right as rain in no time. How do you intend to help him? He didn't look back at her. Watch and learn. She felt it then. Something in the air, a rising energy she could scarcely understand. As she looked on aghast, that great gaping hole in her child's shoulder began to knit itself shut, once mangled flesh mending with alarming speed. Sweat beaded down Aegon's brow as he worked. He said not a word. Drogon didn't move, not an inch. He understood what was happening, her clever boy, and made no effort to dislodge her intended. Her fiancé began to mutter things under his breath, speaking a language she didn't recognize. Whatever it was, the words had power. Drogon's wound closed quickly, flesh filling as the flow of blood slowed to a trickle. A drop. Then not at all. There, Aegon staggered back, looking haggard. That should do it. Drogon trilled once, beat his wings to test them, and found them satisfactory. And then... Hey! Her nephew gasped out a startled laugh as he suddenly found himself cradling the delighted dragon's snout against his chest. All right, no licking. Off you go now, fly. His thanks gladly given, Drogon threw his head back with a pleased cry. The roar that rattled the world was a joyous one indeed. A few sharp beats of his wings put him to right, and he was aloft, soaring upward to join Aegon. His cousin cried out a greeting, and soon enough they were chasing one another through the air once more. All this in the span of a few minutes. Daenerys watched it all, somewhat thunderstruck by what she'd just seen. What sorcery was this? Had the stars truly aligned for her? Was her foul luck finally beginning to turn for the better? She had only ever loved two men before him. Drogo had died, and Dario she'd left behind. Aegon was neither of them, and it showed. Despite his madness, he'd shown himself to have a sharp tactical mind. He fought hard, and her children liked him. And now he'd revealed himself to be a healer atop all that. That settled it. She was keeping him. But first she had to know. Are you a sorcerer of some sort? Not quite. He quirked a bemused, pale brow at her, perhaps sensing some unspoken question in her mind. What I use isn't magic, not as you know it, but it does the trick in a pinch. Was there something you'd like to ask me? He looked out to the army. Did you want me to heal the wounded? Now there was a thought, one that found itself summarily slaughtered as his gaze flitted back to her. I could heal you too, if you like. Her eyes widened a little. Did he know? No, he couldn't. It just wasn't possible. I have no need of such. Yes, you do. She lifted her chin, pride rising within. I do not? Yes, you do, he repeated with all the patience of the ocean. I can tell when someone's injured. Yours is an old one, badly healed, but it can still be mended. He didn't say anything more. He didn't have to, bastard. Shame pooled in her gut, dark and ugly. A wound left too long to fester. Now she must tell him, if only to preserve her own honor. Her anger didn't let her yield so easily. You don't understand. Aegon tilted his head. I'd be happy to if you'd let me. I can't have children. He blinked at that, eyes widening a little as he realized what she meant. There, she'd said it, and set herself free. She waited for the shock and pity to become anger, waited for the outrage, for the claims that she'd tricked him, that he wanted nothing to do with her. They never came. Instead, he granted her a long, grave look. Who was it that did this to you? She bit her lip. A witch, and my naivete. His brow furrowed. I'm sensing a story here. There is. He saw the pain her gaze. You don't have to tell me. No, she didn't. But she wanted to tell. She had suffered terribly, but so had he. In that way, they were alike. And so she told him. Told him a tale she'd never dared breathe to another on this side of the narrow sea. Jorah alone knew it, having lived it with her. But he was far from here, in search of a cue to his wretched grayscale. He wasn't here to advise her. She must make her own judgment. So she told all and held nothing back, haltingly at first, recalling bittersweet memories. How naive she had been back then. How pure. How foolish. How, said foolishness, had cost her more than she'd ever dared to dream, and helped shape her from the foolish girl to whom she was now. And there you have it, she finished her tale of woe with a sigh. I paid the price for my foolishness. It's just not possible. May I? Aegon remained undaunted and held out a hand just shy of her stomach. He did not touch, not without her permission, despite having returned her kiss prior. She nearly scoffed, but reconsidered at the last. What was the harm? She had nothing to lose and everything to gain. At worst, she would be disappointed, and something in her yearned for success. This is an old wound, long since healed. You cannot simply undo what has been done. He smirked, rising to the challenge. Never say never. His palm gently touched her flat stomach. Nothing happened. A moment passed. Another. Then another. Another. Still now. His hand pulsed and something shot through her. It was pain. Heat, fire, burning, make it stop. Her body jolted in agony as she doubled over in surprise, ready to cry out only for the pain to fade as quickly as it came. Something warm spread from her lower stomach, a faint tingling sensation that vanished thrice as fast. She'd felt something just then, like a tightly wound knot deep within her had come undone. She couldn't be entirely certain, but had he really? "What did you do?" "I healed you." He said it as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. That went well beyond healing. She'd felt him reach inside her and twist. "Just, what are you?" More than a mere Targaryen, that much had become abundantly clear to her. Much more. "Family?" He smiled softly for her, sadly even, and she knew in that moment he saw her awe. And her fear, that must hasn't changed, and it never will. "Now let's go home." He took her hand in his. Had he wished it, she would have taken her then and there. Instead, he pressed a chaste kiss to her forehead, ever the gentleman. Tear rolled down her cheek. "Yes," she said softly, little more than a whisper. "Let's..." When they returned to Dragonstone, the king in the north was waiting for them. "We're only human. We love who we love. Such is life." Future scene. Bend no knee. The king in the north had come to Dragonstone. Daenerys could see his ship from here high atop Drogon's back, a large galleon moored by the castle bay, nestled against their fleet. At least she assumed it was Jon Snow's ship. If not, then a very foolish foe had come to their doorstep. No, it must be him. Who else would willingly approach an isle swarming with dragons? She doubted their return had gone unnoticed at that. After all, one could hardly fail to notice Drogon from afar, much less a unique beast like Aegon. Dragons were hardly subtle creatures at the best of times, and these two were eager to roost after such a long flight. Thought had her smiling into her child's dust-colored scales. Now there was a sight sure to give Northmen a fright. A hue and cry went up from below, and not just from the guards at that. She heard Aegon whoop a beat before their descent. Looking down, she could see why. Rhaegal and Viserion had finally noticed their arrival now as well. She could see them stirring on the cliffs below. The smaller dragons trilled happily at their brother's return, quieting only a little as Aegon descended, allowing his rider to disembark at a brisk pace. Not one to be outdone, Daenerys did the same with Drogon, who immediately craned his long neck toward his siblings. Aegon boomed a greeting of his own, and just like that, the four of them were off, chasing and braying at one another through the clouds like a pack of happy dogs. Daenerys couldn't quite conceal her smile. Such feisty children she had. It was good of Aegon's dragon to tolerate them. "Aegon, Naruto," nudged her side. "Not something you see every day, is it?" No, it certainly wasn't. Together they made their way to the castle in comfortable silence, save for the distant crashing of the waves. The salty spray felt good against her arms, though she found herself wishing she had dressed warmer. Alas, her old attire was not simply not suited to the current climate. It had been a pleasant experience wearing her blue dress again, something to remind her of better times across the narrow sea, when she was more concerned with freeing the people of Slaver's Bay, when she needn't worry about foreign powers or enemy armies, when everything seemed so much simpler. But life was seldom simple here in Westeros and cold. Though Daenerys was, she was beginning to realize she didn't like darker colors. Wearing nothing but black made her seem dour and stuffy, grim and cold, when in truth she wanted to be warm and kind. Now there was a thought. Perhaps she'd see if she could procure something a bit brighter in the future. And how strange it was to finally be able to think of such. For so long she had accepted her infertility as a fact of life, until it wasn't. Now that she could have children again, the promise of sex held much more than just physical appeal, but emotional comfort as well. She could have heirs. She wanted a son, wanted one so badly it made her breast ache. The son she'd never had, the son that wretched witch had stolen from her so long. Of course, a little princess would be all well and good. Twins would be an unexpected but welcome surprise as well. A little shiver overtook her, and not from the cold. Aegon. Noticed, of course. Still not used to it, are you? Daenerys looped an arm in his for warmth. A little, she lied. His smile flashed out, causing her heart to skip a beat. I can think of a few ways to warm you up. She flicked a bemused look his way. I imagine you can. Bold of you to suggest such a thing out in the open. I was talking about swinging a sword, my lady. His grin gained a teasing edge. Whatever did you think I meant? Heat seared through her face. Oh, he was good with his games. Very good. Her certainly knew his way around a bit of banter. She liked that. It made him seem more human somehow, more humble despite his own professed madness. A dragon was no slave, and Aegon certainly wasn't. Even now, when faced with the prospect of meeting a self-proclaimed monarch, and she had views about that, he remained steadfast and strong in the face of adversity. While she massaged one of her arms, recalling her prior weakness at the Blackwater Rush. Once we've spoken with this Jon Snow, I need to start my training. He nodded. Indeed you do. Brat? She granted him a grave look, noting the sly smirk he wore. Careful now, she cautioned him. I enjoy your company, but you overreach yourself. I am your queen. You are, he allowed, but his grin gained an edge, warming her blood in return. If you wanted a mindless pawn, you wouldn't have proposed to me. Fair enough. There was a certain endearment to his blunt way of speech. Aegon had been born bold, was always bold, and would likely die bold. No, she amended hastily. He couldn't die. She'd lost too many loves already, and left so many others behind. Fate could fuck right off. He absolutely could not. If he lost his life, if something happened to him, or heavens forbid someone hurt him, she might just go mad, assuming she wasn't already. Perhaps that made her a selfish woman. So be it. No, nay, never, not for the world. No one else could have him. She'd burn any who tried to take him. Squeezing a little hard there, Dany. She blinked and looked down, realized her fingers had bit into his arm while they walked. Forgive me. There's nothing to forgive. Far from being concerned. Aegon only smiled, good eye creasing. You were lost in your head. It happens. Last. She couldn't bear it when he looked at her like that. It made her feel warm and hopeful and loved. Yes, but more than that, she felt safe. Here was someone who would never betray her, who wasn't afraid to tell her when she was doing something foolish, who would happily help her take the Iron Throne and sit it for decades to come. He was the other half of her soul, and she wanted him, damn it. Desire sparked in her, and she grabbed him by the face, wrestling his lips down to hers. His hands settled about her waist and held tight even as her own linked behind his head. The better to pull him closer and deepen the kiss. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. She reveled in kissing him, but she longed to find a solid surface to push him against, be it a wall, or a bed, or... About this king in the north, Aegon said between kisses. I say we let him keep his kingdom. It'll be easier to draw him into the fold if we do. What was he on about? She bristled at the very insinuation and pulled away with a quizzical frown, desire fading. The 7 kingdoms are ours to rule. They are, he allowed. But why on earth would we ever want to go north? That one's larger than the other 6 combined. Let the northerners have that land. We don't need it. They, however, need our food, and it would be a sight easier to have them as allies rather than cow them into submission. She bridled at that remark, mightily put out. He could be here to swear fealty for all you know. Aegon, scoffed. I'd bet my sword he won't. Northerners are stubborn. Anyone calling himself king in the north will be thrice as bullheaded. Did he even realize what he was saying? She'd crossed the narrow sea to rule Westeros, not half of it. I will not simply give away a piece of our realm. Dany. No, she scowled at him. I will hear no more of it. Aegon looked like he wanted to argue, but thought better of it. "Let's make a wager, then." An almost impish gleam shone in his good eye. 30 laps around the yard says, "Jon Snow won't bend the knee." Running laps? Her? She wanted to train, yes, but that sounded awful. He'd probably chase her all the while. She wanted to say no, and yet her Targaryen pride prickled at the thought. "What if I'm right? I'll serve you on hand and knee for the rest of the month. I'll even compose a ballad for you." He offered her his hand, grinning like a fox. "Deal?" Her brows show into her hair. "You can sing." Aegon wagged a finger at her. "You'll just have to win the bet and find out now, won't you?" Daenerys found herself blinking all the same, somewhat taken aback. He would sing for her? She'd never heard him sing, didn't even know he could. And she'd never been serenaded before. She scowled at him, but shook his hand all the same. "I suppose we should make ourselves presentable then." In short order, they did just that. 0-0. You stand in the presence of Daenerys, Stormborn of House Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Daenerys sat upon her throne once more, clad in her dark garments, and listened with half an ear, as Missandei introduced her with sound and aplomb, listing her lengthy titles one by one, all the while resisting the urge to scratch her nose. Perhaps she had one too many titles after all. Granted, she had earned each of them, but actually paying attention to them was tiresome. However, did Tyrion and the rest tolerate it all? Aegon stood by her side, closer than all the rest, ready to defend her if need be. She glanced at him askance. Let the king in the north keep his kingdom, honestly. Did he take her for a fool? He might have come to bend the knee for all they knew. That said, Jon Snow was certainly a fierce-looking man, lean and dark-haired with all the pale skin of a northerner. He was certainly fit enough in that armor of his. If her heart hadn't been for another, she might have found him handsome. As it were, she wondered at the bravery it must have taken for him to come here with so few soldiers. Doubtless his advisors had told him to stay away, yet here he was. Curious. This is Jon Snow. The weathered man beside him introduced the still silent Northman. He's king in the north. Thank you for traveling so far, my lord, she addressed him kindly. I hope the seas weren't too rough. He granted her a careworn smile. The winds were kind, your grace. Apologies, his second interjected ruefully. I have a flea-bottom accent, I know. But Jon Snow is king in the north, your grace. He's not a lord. Oh, he wanted to play games with her, did he? All right, she'd play. Forgive me, sir. Tyrion interjected on her behalf. Your grace, this is Sir Davos Seaworth. Forgive me, Sir Davos. It took every bit of her ironclad self-control to keep a cold smile from splitting her face. I never did receive a formal education, but I could have sworn I read the last king in the north was Torrhen Stark, who bent the knee to my ancestor, Aegon Targaryen, in exchange for his life and the lives of his Northmen. Torrhen Stark swore fealty to House Targaryen in perpetuity. Her head tilted just so, feigning innocence. Or do I have my facts wrong? The man faltered. I wasn't there, your grace. It wouldn't do to be cruel. No, of course not. But still, an oath is an oath. And in perpetuity means, she looked to her hand. What does it mean, Lord Tyrion? Forever. Tyrion almost seemed to sigh the word. He knew the argument that was coming. Too bad. She was in a foul mood already. So I assume, my lord. She leaned on the word, putting emphasis on it, that you're here to bend the knee. Jon Snow met her eyes. She dared to hope. I am not. Daenerys could have sworn she heard Aegon mutter told you so under his breath. Damn it. Oh. She leaned back against her throne. Well, that is unfortunate. For her as much as him. You've traveled all this way to break faith with House Targaryen. Break faith? Jon Snow made an incredulous noise, looking at her like she'd grown a second head. Your father burned my grandfather alive. He burned my uncle alive. He would have burned the 7 kingdoms. My father was an evil man. She winced even saying it, for it had been a bitter pill to swallow. On behalf of House Targaryen, I ask your forgiveness for the crimes he committed against your family. And I ask you not to judge a daughter by the sins of her father. Aegon made a pleased noise at that. She took strength from it and bowled on. Our 2 houses were allies for centuries. And those centuries were the best the 7 kingdoms have ever known. Centuries of peace and prosperity, with a Targaryen sitting on the Iron Throne and a Stark serving as Warden of the North. We are the last Targaryens, Jon Snow. Honor the pledge your ancestor made to mine. Bend the knee, and I will name you Warden of the North. Together we will save this country from those who would destroy it. He looked around for a moment. You're right, he said at last. You're not guilty of your father's crimes. Her heart soared with triumph. Ha! Take that! Victory was hers. And I am not beholden to my ancestors' vows. Hope died, stubborn, foolish son of a mole. Then why are you here? Because I need your help, he declared. And you need mine. She blinked, taken aback by the sheer audacity of it all. Did you see the dragons flying overhead when you arrived? I did. And did you see the Dothraki, all of whom have sworn to kill for me? Aye, he replied. They're hard to miss. But still, I need your help. Not to defeat, Cersei, Sir Davos put in. You could storm King's Landing tomorrow and the city would fall. Hell, we almost took it immediately without dragons. Almost, Tyrion put in glibly. Davos glowered at him. If looks could kill, the dwarf would have been a pile of ashes upon the floor. But you haven't stormed King's Landing, Jon spoke up. Why not? His words instantly put her on the defensive, for there was no clear-cut answer she could give without weakening her position. The only reason I can see is that you don't want to kill thousands of innocent people. It's the fastest way to win the war, but you won't do it. Which means, at the very least, you're better than Cersei. My, but this wolf had some spine to him. Still, that doesn't explain why I need your help. Because, right now, he said, you and I and Cersei and everyone else, we're children playing at a game, screaming that the rules aren't fair. Aegon palmed his face as he heaved a sigh. And you were doing so well. Daenerys looked at Tyrion. You told me you liked this man. I do, against my better judgment. In the time since he's met me, she bit back on a hiss as she looked Jon's way. He's refused to call me queen, refused to bow, and now he's calling me a child. I believe he's calling us all children. Credit where it was due, her hand tried to defend his friend valiantly. He did not succeed. It's a figure of speech. Jon dared a step forward. Your Grace, everyone you know will die before winter if we don't defeat the enemy to the north. She scowled at him. As far as I can see, you are the enemy to the north. He shook his head. I am not your enemy. The dead are the enemy? Silence reigned supreme. The dead, incredulous, she looked back to Tyrion. Is that another figure of speech? Evidently not, for the king in the north wasn't finished. The army of the dead is on the march. Army of the dead. Tyrion didn't guffaw, but it was a very close thing indeed. When did this come about? Jon cast the little Lannister a pleading gaze. You don't know me well, my lord, but do you think I'm a liar? Or a madman? No, he sighed. I don't think you're either of those things. The army of the dead is real. Jon dared another step forward, heedless of the nearby Dothraki. The White Walkers are real. The Night King is real. I've seen them. If they get past the wall and we're squabbling amongst ourselves, we're finished. Anger sparked in Dany's heart. Finished? Her? She'd only just begun. She would not be dismissed so easily. I was born here at Dragonstone, you know. Not that I can remember it. She rose from her throne. We fled before Robert's assassins could find us. Aegon sighed under his breath. Here we go. Robert was your father's best friend, no? She moved down the steps, one at a time, considering him. I wonder if your father knew his best friend sent assassins to murder a baby girl in her crib? Not that it matters now, of course. I spent my life in foreign lands. So many men have tried to kill me. I don't remember their names. 2 more steps now? I have been sold like a broodmare. I've been chained and betrayed, raped and defiled. Do you know what kept me standing through all those years in exile? The king in the north didn't speak. He didn't dare. He absolutely did not dare. Faith. She all but spat the word at him, lips curling around her teeth in a furious hiss. Not in any silent gods, not in myths and legends. In myself, in Daenerys Targaryen. The world hadn't seen a dragon in centuries, until my children were born. The Dothraki hadn't crossed the sea, any sea. They did for me. I was born to rule the 7 kingdoms. She stopped short of him now, just out of arm's reach. And I will, without allowing myself to be distracted by this nonsense. You'll be ruling over a graveyard if we don't defeat the Night King. Enough? He'd interrupted her for the last time. Now her temper sparked. She looked to her guards. Take him away. Dothraki reached for Jon. Mistakes were made. The king in the north slugged the man in the mouth, and he dropped like a sack of potatoes. Before anyone could think to draw their weapons, he moved. And what a move it was. You want to talk about fate? Rather than attack with his bare hands, Jon Snow rounded on her, eyes wild, voice rising as he thrust a finger in her startled face. Tell that to the wildlings who lost their families at Hardhome. Say that to all those who died screaming under a mob of bodies. I saw them, the White Walkers, face to face. I bloody killed one and saw what followed. Hordes of undead, skeletons with strips of flesh hanging off, freshly dead men, women, and children, turning on their friends and family. His eyes became glazed, his voice holding a terrible weight that seemed to press down around her temples. I saw the land become silent, and the Night King walk out onto that dock, eyes bright blue, a crown of horns on his head, all cold malice and death. Do you even know what it's like to see something like that? She tried to speak, only for Jon to silence her with a snarl. I watched that creature raise his arms, and when he did, her fellow monarch fought down a shudder, mastered himself, and bowled on. All the dead stood. Every last one, my friends, brothers of the Night's Watch, all stained with blood and eyes icy blue. Nothing but puppets and meat for the Night King to use. His words, his haunted rage, had cast a spell over them all, holding them in his thrall. You think the White Walkers don't exist? That they're mere myths and legends? That they're not real? A bitter bark of laughter burst from him, sharp and angry, swallowing any response she might have made. When they marched down here, he thrust a gloved finger at the floor. When your precious army starts dying and coming back as whites, when your beloved dragons are shot down by White Walkers, without so much as smile, and their eyes open blue, you'll bloody realize what's real. Maybe then you'll stop faffing about with your stupid iron chair and understand. Daenerys reeled back, eyes wide, balking at the sheer vitriol in his tone. No one had ever shouted at her like that, not even Aegon. Much to her chagrin, her intended began to clap. The wolf has fire in him. He sauntered forward, swaggered really, one hand on the hilt of his sword. Are we sure he's not a dragon in disguise? Daenerys turned a baffled look on her fiancé. You would like him. He's like you. Now, Aegon seemed darkly amused by it all. We're all the same side here, aren't we? Jon squared his shoulders. And what side is that? We all despise the Lannisters. Well, he amended with a rueful look at Tyrion. Most of the Lannisters, present company excluded, of course. After all, they've wounded your family even more than the Targaryens, haven't they? Aerys took your grandfather and your uncle, but Cersei and her ilk shattered your family, just as they did ours. Isn't that worth a bit of blood? Jon hesitated. Aha! Aegon thrust a finger at him. There it is. I'm good at reading people. You hate them just as much as we do. It's true, I have no love for the Lannisters. Then you won't mind helping us destroy them first. He cut him off with a limpid smile. It won't even take a week. We'll happily help you with your problem afterward. A week is more than enough time for the army of the dead to face the wall. The war against my sister has already begun, Tyrion chimed in. You can't expect us to join you in fighting whatever you saw beyond the wall. What I saw was real. Daenerys scoffed, unable to hold back her disbelief. That remains to be seen. You don't believe him. Davos stepped up once more, impressing her yet again with his forthrightness. I understand that. It sounds like nonsense. But if destiny has brought Daenerys Targaryen back to our shores, it has also made Jon Snow king in the north. You were the first to bring Dothraki to Westeros. He took a quick breath, then barreled on before she could get a word in. He is the first to make allies of wildlings and Northmen. You were named Mother of Dragons. He became Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. You rose as Queen of Meereen. He was declared king in the north. He paused now, letting the words ring in the throne room. Slightly less impressive titles, I know, but not because of his birthright. He has no birthright. He's a damn bastard. He swung an arm out, voice rising with passion, raw emotion from an aged man who had seen much, no more than anyone his age should. All those hard sons of bitches chose him as their leader because they believe in him. All those things you don't believe in. He faced those things. He fought those things for the good of his people. He risked his life for the good of his people. He took a knife in the heart for his people. He gave his own... Jon quelled him with a glance. A knife in the heart. Aegon interest redoubled. So you've died as well. Jon recoiled at the word, shook his head, then rallied. Daenerys eyed him speculatively. Listen to yourselves. Davos heaved a sigh. If we don't put aside our enmities and band together, we will die. And then it doesn't matter whose skeleton sits on the Iron Throne. If it doesn't matter, then you might as well kneel. Tyrion came to her defense, ever the middleman. Swear your allegiance to Queen Daenerys and King Aegon. Help them defeat my sister, and together our armies will protect the north. There's no time for that. Jon remained damnably stubborn, much to her ire. There's no time for any of this. While we stand here debating, it takes no time to bend the knee. For all their mounting tempers, Tyrion tried one last time with all the courage of a giant. Pledge your sword to her cause, then. And why in the seven hells would I do that? Jon recoiled as though the very implication of it all stung him. I mean no offense, your graces, but I don't know you. Either of you. He looked between her and Aegon as one might perfect strangers, which, to be fair, they were. As far as I can tell, your claim to the throne rests entirely on your father's name, and my own father fought to overthrow the Mad King. The lords of the North placed their trust in me to lead them, and I will continue to do so, as well as I can, for as long as I can. Oh, this Jon Snow was good. Very good indeed. Such a shame he was her enemy. That's fair. She granted him a grave nod. It's also fair to point out that I'm the rightful queen of the Seven Kingdoms. By declaring yourself king of the northernmost kingdom, you are in open rebellion. Jon bridled. Begging your pardon, your grace, but you're not listening. I think that's quite enough for one day. Aegon stepped between them and bodily thrust them apart. If we keep going like this, blood will be spilled, and we'll all do things we might regret. There's no need for that now, is there? He looked between the two of them, all scarred smiles. We're all friends here, aren't we? Eh? Daenerys glared bloody red daggers at her intended. Jon stared at him coldly, baffled by his behavior. Aegon didn't back down, bless him. You must forgive my manners. She took a deep breath for calm, then looked to Jon and Davos. The two of you must be tired after your long journey. We'll have baths drawn for you and supper sent to your rooms. Her piece said she turned and marched back to her throne, content to pretend he didn't exist. Of course, the king in the north couldn't let that be. Am I your prisoner? Gods be good, but he just had to get one last remark in, didn't he? Daenerys glared over her shoulder at him. Not yet. 0-0. Aegon found him on the cliffs. In hindsight, Jon wasn't surprised. It was the only place he could get away from everyone and see his ship, so it made sense that someone would track him down here. Rooting, are we? He didn't answer, refused to even look at him. That didn't stop Aegon, not in the least. No, not by a mile. You're doing a very good job of it, the prince jibed, standing by his side. You've got the whole dark and somber look going for you. Almost reminds me of an old friend. You would have liked him, I think. You could both be dark and broody together. Would he never stop talking? You know, his name was Sasuke. Jon's temper sparked and he rounded on him. Why am I a prisoner here? You're not a prisoner. The prince swept a hand out across the cliffs. You're free to walk the castle, the yard, the beaches, wherever you want, really? Except my ship. He looked to the moored galleon so close, yet so far away. I can't leave. No, you can't. Her intended smiled at him. But there's a reason for that. If we let you leave now, we'd never have a chance to make a proper alliance. He nearly guffawed outright. And you think there's a chance for that? After what you just heard? You lay a lot at Dany's feet. You can't expect her to just blindly accept it straight away. He clapped him on the back. Don't worry about her. She'll come around once she's finished sulking. This is what she does. After all, she protects people from monsters. It's why she crossed the narrow sea, you see. His good eye winked at him jovially. Because, sometimes, you need a monster to fight a monster. Jon frowned at him. And that's what you are, a monster. Aegon shrugged. I can be at times. Jon winced. You're insane. I am Aegon Naruto, granted him a little. But I'm also sane enough to admit it. That doesn't make any sense. Laugh was his reward. Trying having your skull smashed in as a babe, dying, and coming back? See if things make sense then. He rounded on him. I have. Someone smashed in your skull as a baby? Jon blanched. No, but I suffered something similar not long ago. Aegon's eye fastened upon him. You're telling the truth, aren't you? He was. Gods knew he wished otherwise. There were things a man shouldn't see, shouldn't suffer, shouldn't signify. That was one of them. Stay here, Jon Snow. Something must have shone through his gaze, because Aegon clasped his shoulder with one hand, squeezed, then walked away. I'll have a word with our queen. He frowned at his broad back. She is not my queen. Aegon laughed and kept walking. Be glad that she isn't. As luck would have it, Daenerys was waiting for him when he returned. Just sitting there on his bed. Nay, we talk. There is a saying, once bitten, twice shy. I'm afraid I'm not at all familiar with that saying, Lord or Baron. It is an idiom from my homeland. One who has been hurt when trying to do something becomes fearful of doing it again. Some might say that is perfectly natural. We fear that which pains us, even more so that which we do not understand. But there need be no fear here. I can see it in your eyes. You love my nephew. As he does you, give him but a chance to prove it, and you won't be disappointed. That boy would go to the 7 hells and back with a smile. If you but asked him. You should talk to him. This kind of discord only serves our enemies. I will take your counsel into consideration. Yan old serpent's advice to a young dragon. Once bitten, twice shy. Have you taken leave of your senses? Cersei tried not to flinch. She made a good showing of it, Tywin thought, but some instincts were ingrained too deep even for her to shake. The moment he threw the severed heads down at her feet, she winced. In many ways, his daughter was a child in a woman's body, one who never truly grew up. He'd oft despaired of her ghastly behavior in the past, but never like this. Never to this extent. 3 heads they were, fresh from the gallows. The Mad Queen regarded the gaping faces at her shoes with a blank expression. They were insurrectionists, pandering fools who spoke of the Dragon Queen and rebelled against the crown. Tywin's cane clicked down. They were boys, harmless servants indulging in a bit of gossip. And yet you saw fit to slaughter them and their family in full view of the city. She didn't even seem to hear him. Everyone who isn't with us is against us, Father. God save him from vicious idiots. He knew well the reason for this latest bout of mania. Jaime had returned to the capital, battered, beaten, and worst for wear, but with news. 4 dragons, men burned and torn apart, their army routed while Highgarden stood strong. He'd sickened since and hadn't left his bed in days. Qyburn wasn't certain he would survive. Cersei had become increasingly paranoid hence. The city was starving, the people frenzied. And now she did this. He had told her not to execute the servants, for that was the mark of a foolish and thoughtless ruler. She had disobeyed him, of course, blast. But why had he ever thought she would listen? Now he towered over her, leaning heavily upon his cane. Yes, but still well within striking distance. He contemplated it for a moment, then thought better of it. No, he mustn't. No matter how gratifying it might feel, striking Cersei the Queen would only destabilize their position yet further. Instead, he fixed her with a look colder than all the 7 hells combined. Leave us. The guards hesitated, looking amongst themselves in their shiny new armor. On the contrary, his men, good Lannister men carefully cultivated over the last week, stood ready. Leave, he growled the word out at them like ground glass. Or I shall have you all beheaded come sundown. They needn't be told twice. One broke ranks and the others followed. Without the imposing terror of the mountain at their back, their wills were weak. They scarpered and shut the door behind them with a ponderous boom, leaving them alone with naught but the Iron Throne. Tywin limped up the steps to meet his daughter. This time she didn't flinch. Foolish of her. Most foolish indeed. The moment he reached her, he struck her across the face with an open palm. Cersei recoiled, clutching her cheek. You dare! Get out. Her face darkened. I am the Queen. You cannot command. Tywin's temper sparked and his cane cracked across her face, breaking her nose. Out of my sight! Cersei did not walk. That implied some small smidgen of dignity on her part. She fled. Tywin watched his spawn go with hate in his heart and shame in his soul. He sank down into the Iron Throne with a weary sigh and took his head between his hands. This was his legacy. One son bedridden, another a traitor, and his daughter a vicious idiot. Small wonder Joffrey had gotten it from her. At least he had been able to control this one. He'd paid dearly for that outburst just now. He knew it. Such weakness. Such corruption. It made him sick. Maybe Aerys had the right of it after all. Maybe it should all just burn. And King's Landing would when the Targaryen girl came to call. Who knew what she was plotting now? Fire and blood, no doubt. 0. Nay, we talk. It was a classic standoff. Naruto stared at Daenerys. She stared right back. Nobody moved. No one even seemed to breathe. Westeros, nay, the very world itself seemed to hold its breath, balanced on a knife's edge, waiting for one of them to make a move. That last bit was perhaps something of an exaggeration, Naruto found, but one that fit the situation all the same. Daenerys watched him and he watched her right back, two dragons wary of one another. She patted the empty bed with one hand. "Won't you come in?" He made a face. "That depends." She frowned. "On you." That drew a blink from her, accompanied by a slow tilt of the head. "Have I done something to offend you?" Not especially. He just couldn't read the look in her eye, and he wasn't sure what she was up to. "You're still running laps around the yard." Danny huffed a little at that, but otherwise didn't refute him. She'd lost their bet fair and square. "I'm not here to talk about that. I wanted to discuss other things." She made no move to discard her dress. If she expected him to disrobe before her and put on a show, then she had another thing coming. "And what is it you want?" He cocked his head. "Besides the Iron Throne, of course, because you made yourself look like a proper fool out there for it." Daenerys bristled, full of righteous indignation, then deflated. "Was I truly that bad?" "You were acting like a brat," he chided her. "The both of you were. I wanted to smack you upside the head." A rueful smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I nearly did." She regarded him with a quizzical expression. "Did you? I couldn't tell." "I'm good at hiding my anger behind a smile when I want to. And you? What do you want to do?" A pregnant pause followed, and he seized it like the madman he was, heedless to any danger. For if nothing was ventured, nothing could be gained. Not just right here, right now, but once the war is won. How do you intend to rule? Because I tell you right now, if you go around trying to bully people like you did Jon Snow, it's not going to end well for you. He could already see her digging her heels in, preparing for what she no doubt thought to be a fight. "We have enemies. You can't expect me to be kind to them all." "Some, yes," he allowed, granting her a nod. "But you nearly made an enemy out of a potential ally today. If I hadn't stepped in, the King of the North might be sailing home right about now." She stiffened a little at the insinuation, but he didn't relent, if only because he knew she respected boldness. Besides, he wanted to get a better feel for the woman who would be his beloved, his queen, and might one day become the mother of his children. "I would rule fairly, of course." "Yes," her interjected kindly, "but how? What laws would you pass? What would you enforce? To whom would you listen?" Daenerys scowled angrily his way. "If this is your idea of bedside manner, then it leaves much to be desired." She hadn't refused him outright good. He met her stare evenly and folded both arms before his chest. Hesitation was, as they say, defeat. "Well." Daenerys squirmed under his gaze and whined a little, a noise she'd never made in public. "I don't know. There. I said it. Are you happy now, Aegon?" Naruto felt a brief flare of irritation spark to life in his chest. He wrote it out with the patience of eternity. "Do you think I enjoy this?" He shook his head. "I'm not doing it to make you uncomfortable." "Then why?" "Because you need to be better than me." He planted his feet and refused to approach. "Not yet. A proper ruler. You'll have to be more than you were in Meereen. Much more. Westeros will eat you alive if you let it. I can help, but I'm pants when it comes to making laws and big decisions. If you want something smashed or burnt, maybe even annihilated, then I'm your man. But laws, peace." Now it was his turn to pull a face. "You'll need to listen to your advisors, trust your own judgment, and choose the best path yourself, and even then half the folks here will fight you. If you want to make the realm for all and break the wheel you've been on about, then you'll have to drag them to it, kicking and screaming. For that, you need a plan." She fell silent for a long moment. "You've put a great deal of thought into this." "Strategy in battle is my strong suit, and it was courtly etiquette, not so much." He shrugged a shoulder. "It's easier if you think of it all as one big battle." For some reason that drew a small, sad little smile to Dany's pale face. "So your quarrel isn't with me, then?" "It has not, nor will it ever be with you. I'm loyal." He lifted his chin. Loyalty always matters. Why? His brow furrowed. I'm afraid I don't follow. That's just it. Her voice peaked for a moment before she managed to master herself. Why do you follow me? Why do you tolerate me at all? Everyone here owes something to me in some way, shape, or form. But you owe me nothing. You could take the 7 kingdoms by storm if you wanted. Doran would surely support you, even if you sought to stake your claim alone. This again, but I don't want to. I'd rather be with you. Which baffles me. Her eyes met his, holding them. I admit, I enjoy your presence, and you are pleasing to the eye. He didn't miss the way her face flushed at that. You have done much for me all without asking for even the smallest repayment. And for what? A little hysterical laugh fled from her lips before she could cover it. There are days I feel that I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to be happy. I don't deserve you. Her shoulders hunched as she hugged herself, head bowing in despair. I fear I will wake one day and find this some passing dream or worse, a nightmare. That I will be alone again. And, shite. They were doing this now, then. He crossed the threshold, latched the door behind him, and sat beside her. It's not a sin to be happy. Draping an arm around her shoulder, her held her close. Or to fall in love. Love. She nearly scoffed, then seemed to think better of it. Is that what you call it? I no longer know what love is. And did you see the way Jon Snow looked at me? He thinks I'm mad. Which was part of the reason he hadn't defended her. He'd wanted her to hear how she sounded to others. To those who didn't owe her their lives. You're not? Maybe not now, she argued. But one day I might be. When I'm older. Just like my father and Neil. You need to stop that. He took her by the shoulders and gave her a stern shake. If you spend your life worrying about what may happen, you'll never know what can happen. She sniffled a little. You've been listening to Tyrion. Are you a philosopher now? A bit, he confessed with a shrug. The little lion's not so bad, like him. He has sound advice most of the time. When it doesn't involve his family. And speaking of family, he shifted his grip on her, moving his hands to hers. Remember what I promised you? I said I would never forsake you, and I meant it. She warbled a little, even if I go mad. Even then, he tapped a finger to his skull, then poked hers. Which you won't. If you lose yourself, I'll snap you out of it. The world already has one mad dragon too many. It doesn't need another. I really don't deserve you. It's not about deserving. He squeezed her hands in his. We're both not quite right. She sighed, but still gripped his fingers tight. Is that another word for mad? Hey, I prefer beautifully broken. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she burst into laughter. Seem he was right about you after all. Confusion reared its ugly head in his ear once more. And who is he, exactly? Oberyn. She smiled a little. Happier this time. I believe he said something along the lines of being once bitten, twice shy. Gods know I've been dancing around this long enough. Naruto nearly sighed. Darn sneaky snake of an uncle. You just had to meddle. He has a way with many things. He looked away with a grimace. Words are but one of them. Spoken like one with the blood of the Dornish in them. Had he a hat, he would have tipped it. As things stood, he could only shrug. My mother would have liked you, I think. Daenerys frowned, misunderstanding him. Elia Martell. Kushina Uzumaki. His lips twitched, though he didn't say the words aloud. She wouldn't understand just yet. She would have taken to Daenerys like a duck to water. In short, she would have been all over her. He could just imagine her response. I just knew you'd go for a blonde. She's beautiful. Look at her eyes. And that hair. Oh my goodness, you have to tell me everything. How did the two of you meet? He could see her now in his mind's eye. She was more real than anything else in this world. Aegon. Naruto blinked, drawn from his pleasant thoughts. A lone tear had rolled down his eye. He scrubbed it with the back of his hand. You were staring. He looked back to find Dany's face flushed, eyes half-lidded, her gaze flecked with a hint of concern. He leaned forward. Wait? She touched a hand to his chest. Before we... She faltered for a moment. I want children. Was that all? All right. His head bobbed. How many? As many as we can have. One couldn't miss the longing in her voice. She clearly wanted to make up for the family she'd never truly had, and he didn't begrudge her that. Whatever our firstborn may be, boy or girl, they will have equal rights. If our firstborn is a girl, then she shall be queen of the 7 kingdoms, and to hell with that, the lords and ladies of Westeros think. Rhaenyra for our first girl and Daemon for our first boy. Her gaze met his, blazing with intent. I won't budge on this. There was a weight to those names. History had not been kind to either. Even so, he didn't have the heart to say no to her. All right. Good. Tension fled from her face, replaced by a searing heat he recognized all too well. I don't want to say anything else about the future right now. Her hand came up to cup his cheek. I'd rather dwell here in the present with you. Her hands reached down, fingers curling against his. She leaned up, tilted her head, and kissed him. Be with me. Naruto shivered a little despite himself. The pleasant sort of shiver one feels when the object of their desire is finally within arm's reach. He wanted to be with her, too. Ravish her, drag her down and drive all those awful doubts out of her head. But he wouldn't do that unless she wanted him to. Daenerys kissed him again. Be with me, she whispered once more, as I want to be with you. Her words were the spark, igniting an inferno. They collided. There was no other word for it. His lips sought hers hungrily, as she did his, their breaths coming in little gasps as they closed the distance between them. Their hands fumbled for purchase and failed to find it beneath their thick outfits. She made an annoyed noise and pulled him closer, dragging his face down to hers. He had absolutely no idea how to remove her clothes properly. Too many layers, so he didn't bother. She had many more outfits like this. Losing one wouldn't be remiss. It would be their first time, not being intimate, but being together. They were neither of them virgins. They knew what they wanted, and with whom they wanted it to be. They'd been dancing around it for days now, no longer. She tore at his clothes, even as he did the same unto her own. Layer by layer they undressed one another until they finally found what they sought. Her nimble fingers peeled his tunic away, while his palms found her bare back, and drew down her dress to caress her bottom. She tugged off his trousers with one hand and freed her hair from its braid with the other. Pale tresses tickled his nose, and he found himself smiling as she climbed atop him. The gesture bespoke of domination, but he wasn't about to let her have her way. Not completely. Her lips met his again, pressing hard enough to bruise. He returned her affection tenfold as his palms settled on her flank and squeezed, drawing a pleased noise from the Mother of Dragons as she laid her hands across the scarred plane of his chest. Not content with that, he reached up to caress her breasts, not roughly as a fumbling fledgling might, but gently, light teasing touches that had her gasping. Emboldened by his behavior, she planted herself right atop him in his lap, then spread her legs on either side of his hips, all but straddling him. There was a dark hunger in her eyes now, an itch demanding to be scratched, a carnal need tamped down for far, far too long. Then she began to move. Oh yes, Daenerys Targaryen knew what she was doing. Exactly what she was doing. Precisely what she was going. Her bright eyes met his, half-lidded in wild triumph. Lips parted in the most wordless of sighs as she ground herself against him. Someone had taught her and taught her well. Each movement of her hips was designed to distract as much delight, every act dragged out to maximize their pleasure. His hands settled against her hips as she rode him, as her body pressed into his. Naruto was a generous lover. He let her have her fun. Once, twice, thrice now. 3 times he allowed Daenerys her way. Then he surged up, grabbed her and pivoted, rolling her onto the bed with such force that she audibly gasped. She gazed up at him, somewhat surprised, breasts pushing up against his chest, nipples hard and terribly aroused. This close he could feel her heart hammering against his, feel her every frantic breath on his face as she gazed deeply into his eyes. She tried to say something, he knew what, but the words failed her. That was all right. He could be patient. Lust was one thing, but love took time. Here and now he was content to hold her here, pin her down, stroke her face with one hand until she calmed down. From there, she linked her hands behind his neck and pulled him closer, until she locked her legs around his waist, urging him on. Well, that was all the encouragement he needed now, wasn't it? "Don't you stop," she gasped up at him. "I'll never forgive you if you stop now." No more words were needed after that display, nor, for that matter, were any given. Naruto dove down to kiss Daenerys anew, and together, their world descended into a carnal haze. "I wouldn't do that, were I you." Tyrion paused before the door, fist raised, just shy of knocking. "Do what?" He looked to the speaker with a bemused sigh. "I have news for our queen." "That may be," Oberyn regarded him with a smirk from where he leaned against the wall. "But I expect she won't want to hear it." "And why is that?" A look of scintillating, sardonic amusement flashed across the older man's face. "She is in talks with our dear prince. Whatever they're discussing, I'm sure they'll want to hear this. Euron Greyjoy has been sighted on the coast. A low moan reverberated through the door. It belonged to their queen. But that would mean... Oh dear. Tyrion blanched. Bugger. "You should be happy, Lannister." Oberyn planted a hand on High's shoulder and steered him away. "We'll soon have little dragons running about once more, with no lions to chase them, nor mountains to fall upon them." He had a telltale gleam in his eyes now, one that spoke for itself. "Today's a day for celebration. Wouldn't you agree?" Not exactly the words he'd use. Oberyn's words sounded like a promise as much as a threat, a warning of the future. "You cannot keep them apart now." He left the words unspoken. "It is much too late for that." Tyrion grimaced at the implicit reminder, yet let himself be steered away nevertheless. "Lovely. Now then," Oberyn drawled. Oberyn drawled as they traipsed away. "Tell me of this wayward kraken you saw. I'm sure we can prepare a surprise for him." Author. Now, we all hate the Lannisters, don't we? I mean, why else would we be here? Hate is a powerful motivator. From the deep. Again. Daenerys winced as a blunted blade crashed down upon her head. The pain served as a reminder, not only of her weakness in a contest of arms, but of the bet she'd lost and the torment she suffered now. Grimacing, she pivoted and struck out with her own weapon, only for an open palm to slap it aside. She stumbled after it, unable to correct herself in time, and was summarily smacked on the knee for her troubles. A rare, frustrated noise parted her lips as she tried to strike at her attacker once more, all for naught. He swayed aside, easily evading her clumsy thrust before retaliating with one of his own. A solid thump on the shoulders drew a pained cry from her. "Again, Dany. Bloody blasted bet." Was that all Aegon would say to her today? Bad enough that he'd awoken her at the crack of dawn and dragged her out here to the courtyards of Dragonstone. Bad enough that he was a merciless teacher, and bad enough that she was pants when it came to. But this, it was humiliating. It certainly didn't help that she's still somewhat sore from last night. Worse, their little fiasco had attracted something of an audience. Worse still, her advisors were all smiling at her. She had an inkling why, but she did not dare voice it. No, she absolutely did not dare. To do so now would only reveal her own weakness and allow them to see just how she truly felt. Happy, that is. Despite all of the trials and tribulations, all she had seen and endured, it felt good to be loved. And if she walked with a slight limp, then no one dared comment on it, not even Miss Sande. Didn't stop them from staring, though. Thump! She yelped as the flat of his blade smacked her square between the eyes, causing her to see stars. Again. Aegon clicked his tongue and traced her thigh with the padded sword. Daenerys drew in an aggravated breath. You did that deliberately? He winked, did I? She tried to thump him with her own practice weapon, only for him to nimbly sidestep her once more. So close. You're stubborn, I'll give you that. I prefer persistent. He laughed at that, not at her, but for her. Oberyn chuckled. You see how she pursues him. Our queen is smitten. Would that the rest of the day was so peaceful. Come the afternoon, tensions had risen around the table once more. A shame, really. She rather liked Jon, but it seemed the boy was hellbent on getting himself killed. If you want to end this war, then you need to make peace with Cersei before it's too late, Jon declared boldly to Aegon. The forgotten son looked to the Stark with a baffled expression. Make peace with Cersei? You're joking, he looked to Tyrion. Tell me he's joking? The dwarf cringed. I'm afraid not. Aegon rose from his chair. Jon stood his ground. In hindsight, that last decision might have been a mistake. I would sooner. He touched one hand to the side of his scarred face as he circled around to meet the young wolf, gouge out my other eye, and hand it to you on a silver platter than make any sort of peace with Tywin Lannister and his psychotic bitch of a daughter. The only reason I don't count Jaime Lannister among that number is because he frankly did the world a favor when he killed Aerys all those years ago. No. A finger swept forth and jabbed into his armored chest. I'll kill every other Lannister I can get my hands on. Tyrion coached. Present company excluded, of course. He granted a quick nod to the dwarf. Your war won't matter when the dead march south, Jon yelled at him. And how are they going to come south? Aegon demanded fiercely. Last I looked, there's a 700-foot-tall wall of ice in the way. We have time. If your Night King can raise the dead as you say he can, the last thing we want to do is dangle a damn dragon in front of him. He scoffed when the younger boy made to protest. No, we need to be smart about this. You want a white? Send me over the bloody wall. I'll grab the first one I find and come back. He thumped a fist against the table. No faffing about, no grand heroics. None of this stupid horse piss.
And when you die, then you leave the realms undefended when the war continues to tear the realm apart. Jon growled, have you no honor for your fellow man?
All the heat bled out of the room at once. Daenerys winced to spite herself. She knew she should say something, anything, but she couldn't help herself. Instead, she watched the fireworks that followed. Honor. The very word was a hiss, a low, feral rasp pushing past Aegon's clenched teeth. You question me about honor when all of you high-strung nobles call yourselves kings and rulers, and yet you make the people who should never even be at war suffer for your overinflated egos. Jon made to protest at that, but the dragon snarled him into silence. I would watch what you say very carefully before you question me, Stark, because the next time you dare make insult of my honor, you will not like me. I dare you to do it, boy. This boy is getting tired of your mockery. Jon growled at the Dragon Prince. You stand here trying to lecture me, and yet as we speak, people are dying because we... Aegon seized a chair and whirled, dashing it to splinters against a nearby wall. Speak boldly, his voice cutting him off. Stand amongst the ashes of 1,000,000 dead souls and ask the ghosts if honor matters. When Jon didn't respond, Aegon huffed out a breath. "The silence is your answer," he told him. "People die, yes, but it's because they are made to by those with authority." "How do you know?" Davos piped up at last. Aegon scoffed at him. "The gods don't determine whether a man lives or dies. People do. The gods only decree when—" She hoped that might be the end of it, that these two stubborn boys would see sense. It was not to be. "You don't know that. We live our lives the way we see fit," Jon told Davos. "Aegon, Wathan go. Go live your life, 'cause you've got a good one," he told him. Jon yelled, "It's what I'm trying to do." "No, what you're trying to do is change what is," Aegon growled out. "You're denying a fundamental truth." Jon blinked, baffled. "And what would that be?" he demanded. Aegon stood straight and looked across the water of the sea, that were like animals. "It's in the blood. It's natural," he told him before scoffing. "Peace. That's an accident. It's what is. When you're pushed, killing's as easy as breathing. When the killing stops in one place, it starts in another. But that's okay. 'Cause you're killing for your family. But it ain't your family who asks you. It's a few men up top who want it. Old men start it. Young men fight it. Nobody wins. Everybody in the middle dies. And nobody tells the truth. Are the gods gonna make all that go away? No." He shook his head. "Don't waste your life. It's pointless for you to try. If you cannot understand that, then go home." Jon bridled. "Really?" Aegonra repeated. "Go home." "I cannot. Why?" The door to the council chambers swung open before he could finish that sentence. Prince Oberyn poked his head in, regarded them all for a moment, and slipped inside. "I hate to interrupt this entertainment, Your Grace, but a fleet has been sighted on the horizon." Daenerys tilted her head. Who would be so bold or foolish enough to do such a thing? He offered her a furled piece of parchment, bearing a familiar sigil. "Euron. 0-0. Standing in the castle's throne room, what passed for one anyways, Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose and willed himself to be calm. He knew as Aegon he had an image to maintain, but here and now, in his moment, he found he didn't care much for it. Because you see, he was angry. Downright furious, really. Not just with Jon, but himself. His head ached, and try as he might, he couldn't banish that last argument from his mind. Why couldn't Jon understand? Why couldn't he see? Why was he being so blasted stubborn? Shaking his head, he pushed that thought down and looked to his right with a sigh. "What in blazes does Euron Greyjoy want?" he demanded of Tyrion. "To speak with Her Majesty the Queen about talks of uniting House Greyjoy and Targaryen in hopes of removing the Mad Queen in King's Landing to instate House Greyjoy as master of ships and trade," the Queen's hand said before leaning over and whispering. "But I highly doubt his claims. The Greyjoys are nothing more than pirates and thieves who claim anything that isn't nailed down to the floor in order to please their drowned god, as well as their overinflated egos." Naruto hummed as he shrugged. Well, he isn't exactly lying. Cersei has made his life all that much more difficult, that his people are also suffering under her regime. But if we can take a potential ally from that cunt of a sister of yours, I'll hear him out. Keep your mind sharp, dwarf. Wouldn't want him to outplay us now, would we?
Tyrion nodded his head. "On that we can agree, my prince," he responded before humming. "Any chance we can't just have in Calagon, burn him out?" The dwarf reconsidered.
"Aegon!" bellowed out a hearty laughter. "Oh, I knew there was a reason I liked you." In truth, he had considered it. It would be the mad thing to do. Perhaps even the right thing. But that would upset Dany. "On that we can agree, my friend." Tyrion smiled happily. Daenerys arrived not a moment later and took her seat beside him. And so, the game began. Daenerys frowned as the doors swung open, admitting their guest. She would grant Euron Greyjoy this much. The man seemed quite confident. Very much so. He did not walk so much as he did strut, all but swaggering into the throne room, as though he hadn't a care in the world, like nothing in it scared him. And perhaps it didn't. Some said the man was mad, that his time in the forbidden and unknown seas had changed him. Your Grace, he considered the sky with a keen eye. Gorgeous beasts. They are... She refused to allow herself to be distracted. Why have you come here? Aegon watched him like a hawk, ready to pounce. There was certainly no love lost between these two. Indeed, the young dragon's gaze remained fixed firmly upon the man, and the horn hanging from his belt. Euron sketched a bow and swayed low with a smug smile. I've come to bargain. Bend the knee and live in the new world, or die standing in the ashes of the old one. It's a simple choice. Choose wisely. Mercy, you say? You misunderstand me. I am being merciful. I could have you burned by my dragons, hung, drawn and quartered, clapped in irons, or given to my husband for torture. He is far less kind than I. Instead, I offer you two forms of mercy, a clean death by beheading, or a chance to live and keep what you have. Cersei Lannister is the monster here, not I. I have no desire to kill you, sir. Indeed, I do not wish to kill anyone here at all. I do not want to burn anyone, nor have I any plans to be Queen of the Ashes. Please, just kneel. Future scene. Call your name. He wants to marry you. That slimy, overgrown squid. What in the hells does that crazy kraken think he is? Not quite the description Daenerys would have used, but she felt it an apt comparison nonetheless. Hiding her smile behind one hand, she swept out of the council chamber with Aegon at her side, hastening down the hall with all due haste. Probably for the best, given the raised voices and arguments they left behind. Euron. Greyjoy's unexpected arrival had thrown Dragonstone into chaos, threatening to uproot not only their strategy, but their very alliance. He'd said his piece and been bundled off to a guest room, left under heavy guard by no less than 3 Unsullied. It was the most she could hope for given the situation. Other matters had not also gone entirely as planned, much to her eternal chagrin. After all, there was a reason she and Aegon had departed so suddenly. We will not take Casterly Rock with the Unsullied. Paul fell over the room as she made her declaration. Tyrion waited for the other boot to drop. Eventually it did. His face went chalk white as all the blood drained from it. Surely you do not mean to burn it. She won't, Aegon answered, stepped up beside her. And Calagon and I will. If your family won't surrender, they'll fall. We have neither the time nor the resources to waste on a protracted siege. The dwarf looked to her for aid. Your Grace, please? Is this how you wish to be remembered? Not her. Aegon was the iron fist, and she the velvet glove. Let the lions learn well the price for defiance. I will offer them mercy first. It is up to them to take it. When he made to protest, she shook her head. The matter is not up for discussion. I have heard your counsel and made my decision. Aegon had thrown his full support behind her, but needless to say, her nephew was somewhat incensed by the Greyjoys' proposal, and Tyrion's naivete besides. She couldn't even blame him for his anger. Not really. Euron had been most forward in his offer, promising them a great many ships in exchange for his hand in marriage. He'd been rather arrogant about it at that. Far too interested in her dragons, especially Ancalagon and Rude, frankly. She didn't like the way he'd stared at her either, as though she were little more than meat to him, someone to be taken and broken. Shudder shook her shoulders, swiftly suppressed. Vile, wretched man. She wasn't afraid of him. Fear implied a natural disinclination on her part, and although she felt such, it was not anxiety that played a part in her distrust of him. It was his eyes. They were cold and dead like that of a fish, his smile false. And he thought to wed her? Her. She ought to slap him for his folly and have him gelded besides. Still, with his ships added to her own, conquest of King's Landing and Casterly Rock would be a mere afterthought. Thus she could hardly afford to dismiss him out of turn, no matter what her council might have to say of him. At least they were all united in their mistrust of him, if nothing else. Please, tell me you don't trust him. She glanced at her consort, matching him step for step, stride for stride. I was hoping you could tell me. Aegon made a rare annoyed noise, his usual smile nowhere to be seen. Easier said than done. I can't get a good read on him. Pity. She pivoted to face him, brow arched. And here I thought to make you my new master of whispers. They shared a laugh at that. There could be no replacing Varys. And they both knew it. Her one-eyed nephew rolled his shoulders in a shrug and granted her a grim grin. It lent him an oddly handsome air despite his eye patch. Or perhaps, in spite of it. Apparently she had a thing for men with scars. Who knew? Or your own kin. You were awfully quick to slip into bed with him. Were you that lonely? Or lustful? Scowling, she ruthlessly suppressed that nasty little voice of self-doubt. They'd not spoken of last night. They would eventually, but not now. There were more pressing matters to which they must attend. I don't like that horn of his. Aegon's voice drew her back to the present with a firm tug. There's magic in it. Frowning, she paused to lean against a worn wall. What kind? Not sure. Here at last he looked uncertain, almost boyish, and it softened the scars of his face. I'm glad we confiscated it. Indeed. Unbidden, she found herself reaching up to stroke those scars. About last night. Aegon went still, pale visage giving nothing away, even under her touch. What about it? Heat rose to her cheeks, and she found herself averting her gaze, just a little. I rather enjoyed it. Then, because she wasn't satisfied with such a paltry explanation, very much so. The tension drained from him, as did I. Good. She released a nervous breath, feeling almost, dare she say, girlish. She hadn't felt this way in years, perhaps later then? She trailed off, choosing to phrase it as a question rather than a command, knowing he wouldn't take kindly to such. Aegon gently took hold of her hand, lifted it to his lips and kissed her ring, lips lingering there. As my queen commands. Or perhaps he would. But he was being bold today. Fresh warmth flooded her face. It was such a simple gesture, but now it had implicit meaning to it. A lesser man might have sought to touch her without permission, but he was not lesser. He waited for her subtle nod before moving in. His hand traced her jaw, caress. Her neck lingered on her shoulder and stayed there. No groping or grasping for him. He was, despite his own admission to madness, the perfect gentleman. Her eyes flitted up to his, and his lone orb traveled down to meet hers. Daenerys felt herself quiver a little, not at all in a bad way. Spark ignited between them once more. Or, now, perhaps, she whispered. His eye lit up. It wasn't hard to find an empty room with a bed. Dragonstone had a great many of those, most of which had been aired out by the servants at Missandei's behest. Her dear friend would likely laugh to see her smitten as she was now. That was the word, wasn't it? Smitten. She'd admittedly come to enjoy Aegon's company, to favor his blunt behavior over the endless politicking and scheming she'd been subject to her. There were no double meanings with him, no tricks or traps to his words when he spoke them. Save such thoughts about Missandei and other fanciful things for another time. Right now, she had far more pleasurable thoughts in mind. Slipping into the guest quarters, she turned away from Aegon, trailing a hand over his chest, and when he didn't immediately follow, lost her patience. With an impatient sigh, she stepped in, leaned up and kissed him roughly, pushing him up against the wall, only to gasp as he bit her neck. Rather than push him away, she savored the pain and wove her fingers into his hair, firmly forcing his lips back to hers instead. She wanted to touch him and be touched. She wanted to forget about being queen for a while and go back to that warm, happy place they'd found last night. She pushed him down onto the bed, sat in his lap and faced him fully, folded her legs so she was resting atop her knees, took his face in her hands and kissed him deeply. He could have fought back, dominated her as he had last night, pinned her down and had his way with her. He didn't. Instead, he allowed her to pin him down for once, laughed as she leaned forward and draped herself over him, all but pinning his wrists above his head. She held him there for a moment, pale hair dangling into his face to tickle his nose. A lovely little curtain to hide their expressions from everyone but one another. Love you. He didn't even have to say throw the I in there, because she knew what he meant. A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth as she released his wrists. And you? There were no words needed after that, nor any said. They divested themselves of their clothes quickly, or slowly in her case. She was careful not to ruin them as they had last night at first, or such was her intent, until Aegon began to kiss her again, distracting her with his tongue. Naturally, such thoughts fell to the wayside like so much morning mist. Releasing his wrists, he shrugged off the last of her garments, squirmed her way back into his lap, and looped her arms behind his head. From there, she settled in against him, clasped her hands onto his shoulders, and held on for dear life. To the hells with Euron and Jon Snow, and the Lannisters and everyone else that kept getting in the way. She needed more moments like these, precious memories that she would cling to with all her strength. With that thought in mind, she quickened her pace atop him, bouncing but a little to draw out her pleasure. He leaned back with a laugh, content to let her have her way, but she wasn't having it. She took a hold of his hands and guided them back to her breasts as she kissed him deeply. He knew what excited her well enough by now, and in a matter of minutes, she felt it coming on. Daenerys arched her neck back, eyes drifting shut in quiet bliss as she quickened her pace atop him. A soft, breathless gasp escaped her as she saw stars. Sweet release. By the gods, she'd forgotten just how good this felt. Once had been more than enough to remind her, twice threatened to get her addicted. Thrice. She was looking forward to the third time already. Why wait, then? She wanted Aegon atop her, wanted him to dominate her as she did him. Evidently he agreed, because he proved most agreeable when she began kissing him again. He ran a hand down her right hip, tracing the curve of her hindquarters, and that was it. They were off again. Seconds bled into minutes, and minutes became hours as they switched positions constantly, tempting and teasing and toying with one another, until finally, there! Screaming his name without a care who heard, Daenerys tumbled off her lover's lap and into his arms, gasping for air. There was little time to sleep. Not with the sun up, not when they were. The both of them, far too worked up. Didn't stop them from cuddling, though. She was beginning to enjoy that aspect of loving, too. The way Aegon held her against him. The almost protective manner he kept an arm around her waist, hand over her stomach, as though to ward off any dagger that might strike at her. Already she could feel a delicious soreness creeping in. She reveled in it as she tucked her head against his chest. Aegon Naruto, rumbled a laugh, holding her close. Had enough? She hummed once and kissed his chest. For now. Insatiable, minx. Daenerys quirked a brow his way. Careful, sir, she huffed. You mock your queen. He kissed her forehead. Would Her Majesty rather I spank you are here, or in the training yard instead? Her face burned and she thumped his chest. Aegon! Her beloved only laughed louder. Insufferable. Oaf. This time he kissed her cheek. Wonderful woman. The sudden compliment had her blushing again for an altogether different reason. Feeling particularly daring, she reached up to embrace him, spooning her body against his beneath the blankets. Aegon let her sulk. Within a matter of moments, she felt her eyelids begin to droop. Well, well, seemed she could sleep like this after all. This was bliss. No, that wasn't quite right. Home. Yes, that was the word she sought. After so long seeking that damnable red door from her childhood, she'd found another. Closing her eyes, she cuddled against her lover. She was home. Just outside, she heard her dragons. Her children roar loudly and abruptly. All of them loudly crying out, as though I pain. Concern. Dawn. What's gotten into them? Aegon stirred against her reluctantly. There would be no time for sleep, it seemed. His concern mirrored here. Dressing themselves quickly, they departed their little hideaway and reached the battlements in short order. From there, she watched Aegon hurtle past, darkening the skies above. Sweeping across the bay, he dove low, and belatedly she saw what he saw. A stray ship in the distance. And there upon its black sail, the sigil of a kraken. Aegon's dragon dove lower still, but mercifully refrained from a strafing run or flaming the vessels. It was only the one ship. How odd. Why would Euron Greyjoy keep one ship isolated from his entire fleet? Perhaps he was cagey, wary, even. In the distance, she heard a horn blow. Aegon hissed out a sudden sharp breath. A moment of silence followed. And then... Wrath of the Flame. I am Dragonbinder. No mortal man shall sound me and live. Blood for fire, fire for blood. A warning. Several days earlier, it was the day of the King's Moot. The drowned priests soundly blew their horns and beat upon the kettle drums, summoning the captains, the heads of houses, and the kings to Naga's bones. From all over the isles they had come, all to choose their new king. Many had put forth their candidates for the Salt Throne. Many were unworthy, as their hoards were as small as a babe. Others were seen as good choices for waging their old ways, their spoils greater than most. Until Eric the Anvil Breaker had made his claim, none had been seen as a potential candidate that was the right choice. His spoils were great, his lines strong and unbroken. However, dear Asha had broken his spirit when she dared him to take the throne himself in his old age, only for him to fail to stand. Theon felt a twinge of pity for the man. Had it been 30 years ago, he might very well have won the moot just now. But it was clear that his time had long passed him. Once Eric had descended, Aeron turned back to the captains. Who shall be king over us? Finally, Theon saw his uncle step forward. Victarion climbed the hill along with his champions Ralph the Limper, Newt the Barber, and Red Ralph Stonehouse. He knelt before Aeron asking for his blessing. Aeron uncorked his water skin and poured the seawater over his head. What is dead may never die, he said, but rises again harder and stronger. Victarion replied. He then turned to the captains and began. You all know who me and know that I am not a man of fancy words. If that is what you seek to find a bard, I have an axe, and I have this. He raised his axe and a mailed fist into the air. I was Balin's most trusted brother. I brought Balin's bride to him. I led the Iron Fleet through many victories. What you shall get from me is more than what you got from Balin in vengeance for our slain brothers. His champions poured out his chests, a wealth of gold, silver, and gemstones, plunder from his countless raids. Then his champions took up the cry, and as captains rushed to take their share of treasure, they joined them. Victarion, 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 Victarion. Theon looked to the sky. He didn't know why, but his instincts that developed to better survive Ramsay's torture were screaming at him to run. This filled Theon with dread, but he didn't see anything, so he forced himself to stay still. His support would be critical for Yara. But the crowd was silenced at last by none other than Yara, who let out a shrill whistle, getting the attention of the captains. Yara climbed up the steps with Theon following her along with Harris Harlaw and Coral the maid. Victarion's champions tried to stop her but were stopped by Theon and Yara's other champions. The captains made way for the pair. These were Balin's children and the crowd was curious to hear what they have to say. As she passed Victarion's gifts, she snatched up a golden collar and placed it on her head, wearing it like a crown. "I ought to thank you for bringing such a treasure hoard to my queen's moot, uncle. Though you needn't come so armed and armored, for I will bring you no harm." Asha's champions smirked at this, though no laughs came from the crowd. "Among us none are braver than my uncle or fiercer in battle. But Victarion has no sons and no wives to produce any." The captains nodded in agreement and Yara continued. "But our claim is stronger still. Balin's brothers cannot come before his sons." "Sons?" Ralph the Limper questioned. "I see but one in Balin's sweet little daughter." "Daughter?" Asha questioned and slipped her hand in her jerkin. "You have me, Ralph the Limper, for it seems I am a woman." She pulled her hand out of her jerkin, revealing a dirk. "And a mother too, it seems, for here is my sweet sucking babe." She raised her dirk in the air. "You cannot lead us," Ralph objected. "Not when Balin's living son is here." Silence overtook the crowd as everyone turned to Theon, expectantly eager to hear what he had to say. Theon slowly looked around, taking a deep breath. He stepped forward and spoke. "You know my nuncle," Theon began, "and you know my sister just as well. Many of you have sailed under her. She has led men, she has killed men. A woman of no, it is clear what she truly is. Asha is a reaver. She is a warrior. Asha is ironborn." The captains nodded in agreement, and Theon continued. "When I was taken as a hostage, Balin bred her to rule, and among the House of Greyjoy, we will find no better leader than her." "Your time in the north has clearly slowed your mind, Theon," Victarion quipped. "That is why you think a woman can be our king." The crowd murmured, and Theon glared at his uncle. "Aye, nuncle, I have spent too much time with them." Theon agreed before turning to the crowd, "and that is why I know them better than any of you. The other great houses pay us no mind. To them we are little more than a thorn in their side. When we come raiding, they swat us down, then go back to ignoring us. With Asha as our queen, we will make a mark on the world greater than Harrenhal. Our father attacked the north because its armies marched off to war," Asha cut in. "But we were forced out. Now the Targaryens are returning, and if we do not negotiate a settlement, we will lose everything." "What the Kraken grasps it never lets go," Victarion declared. "And what have we grasped, nuncle?" Asha asked. "For a year we have raided the north, and what do we have to show for the blood that was spilled?" She gestured with her hand, and her champions brought forth her chests. "I will show you all our reward for this war. Here is the wealth of the stony shore," she declared. The first chest was opened, and a torrent of sand poured out. "The riches of the rills." The second chest was opened, and a wave of stones and pebbles poured atop the mound of sand. "And the treasures of Barrowton." The third chest was opened, and an avalanche of turnips rolled atop the pebbles and sand. "This is the vision of my father and uncle," Asha declared. "This is the north." She turned to two of her followers. "Sawain Botley, Harmon Sharp, you lost your eldest sons fighting the northerners." She stabbed two turnips with her dirk and raised it up. "Is this what they died for?" She tossed them to the two men. Harmon stared at the turnip for a moment before looking up. "And if we shout your name?" Harmon wondered. "What will you give us?" "Peace," Asha replied. "Land. Enough for all of us to have. Side with the Targaryen king while there is still time, and perhaps claim the spoils of Casterly Rock. What say you? Will you crown me and have peace and prosperity, or will you crown Victarion and have war and with that annihilation?" "Asha!" Theon cried out quickly, followed by Coral the maid and Harris Harlaw. "Asha, Asha, Asha queen!" Shouts of Asha and Victarion surged back and forth, and it seemed as though some savage storm was about to engulf them all. "The storm god is amongst us," the priest thought, sowing fury and discord. Sharp as a sword thrust, The sound of a horn split the air. Bright and baneful was its voice, a shivering hot scream that made a man's bones seem to thrum within him. The cry lingered in the damp sea air. Aaree Daitar. All eyes turned toward the sound. It was one of Euron's mongrels winding the call, a monstrous man with a shaved head. Rings of gold and jade and jet glistened on his arms, and on his broad chest was tattooed some bird of prey, talons dripping blood. Aaree. The horn he blew was shiny black and twisted, and taller than a man as he held it with both hands. It was bound about with bands of red gold and dark steel, incised with ancient Valyrian glyphs that seemed to glow redly as the sound swelled. Aaree Daitar. It was a terrible sound, a wail of pain and fury that seemed to burn the ears. Aegon covered his, and prayed for the drowned god to raise a mighty wave and smash the horn to silence, yet still the shriek went on and on. "It is the horn of hell," he wanted to scream, though no man would have heard him. The cheeks of the tattooed man were so puffed out they looked about to burst, and the muscles in his chest twitched in a way that it made it seem as if the bird were about to rip free of his flesh and take wing. And now the glyphs were burning brightly, every line and letter shimmering with white fire. On and on the sound went, echoing amongst the howling hills behind them, and across the waters of Naga's cradle to ring against the mountains of Great Wick, on and on, until it filled the whole wet world. And when it seemed the sound would never end, it did. The hornblower's breath failed at last. He staggered and almost fell. The priest saw Orkwood catch him by one arm to hold him up, whilst left-hand Lucas Codd took the twisted black horn from his hands. A thin wisp of smoke was rising from the horn, and the priest saw blood and blisters upon the lips of the man who'd sounded it. The bird on his chest was bleeding too. Euron? Greyjoy climbed the hill slowly, with every eye upon him. Above the gull, screamed and screamed again. No godless man may sit the sea-stone chair, Aegon thought, but he knew that he must let his brother speak. His lips moved silently in prayer. Asha's champions stepped aside and Victarions as well. The priest took a step backward and put one hand upon the cold, rough stone of Naga's ribs. The crow's eye stopped atop the steps at the doors of the Grey King's Hall and turned his smiling eye upon the captains and the kings. But Aegon could feel his other eye as well, the one that he kept hidden. "Ironman," boomed Euron Greyjoy, "you have heard my horn. Now hear my words. I am Balon's brother, Quellen's eldest living son. Lord Vicken's blood is in my veins, and the blood of the old Kraken. Yet I have sailed farther than any of them. Only one living Kraken has never known defeat. Only one has never bent his knee. Only one has sailed to Ashai by the shadow, and seen wonders and terrors beyond imagining. If you liked the shadow so well, go back there," called out pink-cheeked Coral the maid, one of Asha's champions. The crow's eye ignored him. "My little brother would finish Balon's war and claim the north. My sweet niece would give us peace and pine cones." His blue lips twisted in a smile. "Asha prefers victory to defeat. Victarion wants a kingdom, not a few scant yards of earth. From me you shall have both. Crow's eye, you call me. Well, who has a keener eye than the crow? After every battle the crows come in their hundreds and their thousands to feast upon the fallen. A crow can espy death from afar, and I say that all of Westeros is dying. Those who follow me will feast until the end of their days. We are the Ironborn, and once we were conquerors. Our writ ran everywhere the sound of the waves was heard. My brother would have you be content with the cold and dismal north, my niece with even less. But I shall give you Lannisport, Highgarden, the Arbor, Old Town, the Riverlands and the Reach, the Kingswood, Dorne and the Marches, the Mountains of the Moon and the Vale of Arryn, Tarth and the Stepstones. I say we take it all. I say we take Westeros." He glanced at the priest. "All for the greater glory of our drowned god, to be sure." For half a heartbeat even Aegon was swept away by the boldness of his words. The priest had dreamed the same dream, when first he'd seen the red comet in the sky. Crow's Eye, Asha called. Did you leave your wits at Ashai? If we cannot hold the north, how can we win the whole of the 7 kingdoms? Why, it has been done before. Did Balin teach his girls so little of the ways of war? Victarion, our brother's daughter has never heard of Aegon the Conqueror, it would seem. Aegon. Victarion crossed his arms against his armored chest. What has the Conqueror to do with us? I know as much of war as you do, Crow's Eye, Asha said. Aegon Targaryen conquered Westeros with dragons. And so shall we, Euron Greyjoy promised. That horn you heard I found amongst the smoking ruins that were Valyria, where no man has dared to walk but me. You heard its call and felt its power. It is a dragon horn, bound with bands of red gold and Valyrian steel, graven with enchantments. The dragon lords of old sounded such horns before the doom devoured them. With this horn I can bind dragons to my will. Asha laughed aloud. A horn to bind goats to your will would be of more use, Crow's Eye. There are no more dragons. Again, girl, you are wrong. There are 3, and I know where to find them. Surely that is worth a driftwood crown. What Euron does not mention is that the dragons belong to Daenerys Targaryen herself. Euron, shouted Left Hand Lucas. Euron! Crow's Eye! Euron! Cried the Red Oarsman. The mutes and mongrels from the silence threw open Euron's chests and spilled out his gifts before the captains and the kings. Then it was Hato Harlaw the priest heard, as he filled his hands with gold. Gorld Goodbrother shouted out as well, and Eric Anvil Breaker, Euron! 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 The cry swelled, became a roar. Euron! Euron! Crow's Eye! Euron King! It rolled up Naga's hill, like the storm, God rattling the clouds. Euron! 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 Even a priest may doubt. Even a prophet may know terror. Aeron Damphair reached within himself for his god, and discovered only silence. As 1,000 voices shouted out his brother's name, all he could hear was the scream of a rusted iron hinge. 0, 0. Craghorn had never felt as accomplished as he was now. He had done it. The Krakens had truly taken a worthy prize. The ultimate prize. The dragons that resided on Dragonstone were now under their thrall, and with it, the WA's snarl filled the air as he looked up in horror as Ankalagon hovered over him, his maw blazing with flame. Impossible, you are under our thrall, beast. How dare you resist your masters? He declared as he raised the horn once more. However, roar ripped the air as heat blazed, and it quickly devoured the Greyjoy who had thought he could rule the will of flame made flesh. The boat was turned to ash as flames burnt it to nothing. The waters boiled as the heat of the flame bathed everything under its raw. The dragonbinder horn dropped in the water unbroken and untouched. As the flames died down, Ankalagon snarled as he dove down, a tidal wave exploding up into the air as he crashed down into the waters in search of the infernal call. Maz claimed down upon the instrument that had meant to command him away from his master, his companion of blood. With a snarl, the massive beast that was more akin to a living calamity burst out of the sea, wings crashing down with thunder and wrath as he blasted free of the confines of the waters beneath him. Another, to fling himself aloft and into the air. From his place upon the sea, he watched as the 3 whelps burned everything around them, the island smoking from the clashing flames of dragonfire as the land burned. The sea blistered and boiled from the heat alone. His master stood alone on the cliff waiting for him. The female was nowhere to be seen, but he could smell her. Crashing down upon the cliff, Ankalagon spat out the horn, allowing his master to grab it, and then mount his companion who commanded him to fly towards a tower of the keep. It was time to flay the fish who thought himself a kraken. 0, 0. Euron grunted as he was pinned beneath the various savages who had came for him. He had been so close to escaping. So close to fleeing the island with his prize, and rather than 3 dragons, he would have bound 4 to his whim. And then, the Dothraki had suddenly stormed his room as the horn sounded within moments. He didn't understand why had they come so quickly. How had they found him so swiftly? He was beaten, bound, and quickly dragged to the throne room, where he was thrown to the ground immediately upon entry. Daenerys sat upon the throne, a glare of utter hatred upon her visage that showed her fury, her wrath. Seconds later, a blast of flames slammed into the ground outside. 3 of the beasts were on a rampage. He was unsure as to what was happening to the big one, his hopeful mount once he escaped this place. May I ask, just what is going on, Your Grace? To have me beaten and dragged before you in chains when you have extended guest right is quite uncouth and unbecoming, he stated, serious as possible. Before she could speak, the wall burst open behind and crumbled as Aegon smashed through, causing Euron to grin. That's funny, you should ask that. A male voice spoke from upon the beast's back, causing Euron's grin to die 1,000 deaths in an instant. Because I think I understand enough to know what it is you actually had in mind, now that the pieces of the puzzle shift into place. Aegon snarked as he jumped down, horn in hand. How did you get that? Euron growled. Your friend on the boat had no need of it once he had burnt to ash, the prince stated. And neither will you once I calm the 3 outside. It is impossible for a dragon to resist the horn's call. How is he not under the horn's thrall? Simple, he was hatched in Ashai, where plenty of dragons still reside, and their masters have a far superior binding than this archaic relic that has a less chance of binding overturning to magic. Aegon stated, blood magic is a powerful force, but that's all I am going to say. He stated, take his head. Aegon waved, causing the Greyjoy to balk in shock. Be quick about it. You can't, Euron called out. I have done no wrong. Yea, my 3 rampaging dragons say otherwise. The Dragon Queen growled out, end him now. No, this wasn't meant to happen. He was meant to conquer the realm. He was to be the undisputed king. It was his right, his destiny. Why was this happening? Before he could ponder on what was all wrong, the sword swung down and removed head from shoulders. And thus Euron's ambition died before it could be born. Daenerys barked an order to the Dothraki, the group quickly grabbing the head and body and dragging it away, most likely to throw it to the sea where it could rot. Naruto and the Mother of Dragons shared a look. So, what do we do? There are 3 dragons on a rampage, and if they aren't quelled, they could very well burn the realm down, he stated. I don't know. What do you expect me to do? She questioned. Aegon looked up to the group, everyone to the painted table. Now, he ordered, and the entire group rushed to the room that held the whole map of Westeros. What are you doing? Tyrion asked. Planning our next move, Aegon said. Moving pieces across the board. Daenerys commands a horde of Dothraki that number over 100,000, while the Unsullied hold 10,000. If we can join our forces with that northern lord's, the combined might brings about 15,000 northern men to the table. Lord Varys, see if Jon could send a message to the free folk and see if they would be willing to continue to fight alongside us, he asked, looking at the eunuch. May I ask why, Your Grace? The spymaster questioned. To be honest, he was unsure if the free folk would be willing to fight, not unless they were to be offered something of extreme value that would be worth the agreement. If the wildling forces joins our own, that means another 25,000 men, of which there are between 500 and 1,000 giants, and just as many mammoths from what I have heard. However, as an incentive, offer to them some land of the Reach as payment. That should encourage them. As for those lands, I will speak with Lady Tyrell about granting it to them for helping in coming battles and settle the debt to the Tarly's betrayal. Maybe put one in charge of the free folk as a lord in return for this favor, Aegon said as he continued. Varys bowed his head. As you wish, Your Grace. The rotten sun continued to move around the table. Then, with the Knights of the Vale joining the north, they have 40,000 men. the Riverlands have another 20,000 men. The first order of business is to finish avenging the Red Wedding if we manage to make an agreement with Jon Snow. This means we will have to march upon the twins, kill the Freys for their betrayal to the north, and bring the Riverlands back into the fold," he said, adjusting some of the figures on the table. He may not have been among the fighting of the various armies, but he most definitely heard enough about the war to know the numbers that stood to fight the greatest. When he had gotten all his pieces in place, he then adjusted them further to suit his needs, as he could see changes being made, or adjusted further depending on possible scenarios playing out. Now, as for our little problem with the Ironborn. The moment that the Ironborn that came here return to the Iron Islands, the entire population will try to send their full fleet of ships to attack the northern houses and their homes, and slaughter the people while robbing them of everything they own. That is why, if a bargain is struck, we will leave a full garrison in each castle from Winterfell to Moat Caitlin to Bear Island, and patrols all along the coastline, about 10,000 men. Then, after we have to burn down the Iron Isles in full, we will then finally crush the remaining Lannisters' 20,000 strong army, allowing us more freedom to move our own forces around. To deal with the Ironborn, we have no choice but to burn their ships, isolate them on their islands, and wipe out their entire degenerate culture forever. "Are you sure that is the best decision, Your Grace?" Missandei asked. "You're talking about wiping out dozens of noble houses, not mention tens of thousands of more men," Daenerys mentioned. "The Iron Islands are nothing but a glorified cove of pirates, raiders, and reavers. The small folk they capture are little more than slaves. Their salt wives are nothing more than sex slaves. Even when our house ruled and outlawed those practices, they still committed them against Westeros. They should have been wiped out centuries ago. They have been reconquered at least twice in the last 200 years alone. Once right after the Dance of Dragons, and when they rebelled against Robert Baratheon. They will never change. We will liberate the slaves and the salt wives, but we kill all the Ironborn. All the drowned priests will be hanged, their sacred texts burned. The salt throne will be torn down. The driftwood crown will be burned to ash," he growled. "Every man, woman, and child that identifies as Ironborn will die. We will not show mercy. We will not compromise. We will wipe them out." Naruto growled as he plunged a knife into a table, right on the spot that represented the Castle of Pike. He didn't care, and many in Westeros would gladly agree with this plan of action. No one gave shit about the Iron Islands but the Iron Islands. They were gonna love them for this. With the Ironborn wiped out, we will continue on, and we will take King's Landing ourselves. Put Dany on the throne and secure peace," Naruto said as he turned around to face his betrothed. "And then, after?" Daenerys questioned. "Well, right now you need to take care of this problem with your dragons. After that, we can handle everything else." "And what about that horn?" the Dragon Queen demanded. "Hide it, blow in it, I don't care. But I want to understand it. I want to find out how it works, and then I'm gonna find a way to destroy the damned thing so that it cannot be used ever again." The Forgotten Son responded as he walked back out the room to find his dragon, which he still held up in the hole of the wall. "Are you sure that this will work? Surely we can find another way," Missandei stated. "Until you can come up with a plan that doesn't require it, then yes," Aegon responded. Mounting his dragon once again, a high Valyrian command was barked, and the massive dragon took off to the skies and flew off into the horizon. Daenerys grunted in annoyance as she grabbed the horn and walked to the opening where Aegon had burst through. Looking at the horn, she cringed in disgust, but nevertheless raised it up, with difficulty, and blew into it. Airy. She wanted to cringe. The sound was most unpleasant, but to her surprise, squawks and chitters filled the air, as her children responded happily. Was it truly that simple? Oh, that was such horse shit. She was sure Aegon had meant it to be a joke, but still, for it to work so seamlessly. No, she had to help him. He was right about those Ironborn. They were a plague unto the world, caring more about what they could take from others than what they could do. It was time the Kraken was shown its rightful place. Quickly calling to her children, she mounted Drogon and took flight after Aegon and Aegon, Viserion and Rhaegal quickly following behind her. 0. It had been days since Euron had made his declaration. He had been chosen as the king of the Ironborn. He had told them he was heading out to claim the dragons, and yet he had to return with them. Theon sat at the table drinking. Several others gathered around to throw japes and barbed words. As it stood, a fight was all but about to break out, one which he was not going to participate in, but gladly watch. Women were being fucked. Men cursed. The hall was all but filled with every fashion of debauchery that could be imagined in any taste or form. But before any large-scale fight could break out, an ear-splitting roar erupted, cutting hard through the air like Valyrian steel. The sound caught the attention of the various men. Fighting or fucking all but stopped and picked themselves up. Another roar so horrifying that it pierced the skies and out of the clouds filled the air as they raced out, watching as a massive form descended from the clouds. Many began to cheer, having believed that Euron had returned with his prize of 3 dragons. However, they were sorely mistaken when the massive beast roared its fury and unleashed a golden-black mixture from its maw, down upon the ports where their ships rested. In the blink of an eye, everything had changed. The captains and head of houses barely regained their senses when Aegon burned the next port and the remaining ships in another blast of fire that all but tore the ships apart in a lone blast of flame. "Oh no," thought many of the captains. "Our ships were in the harbor. We are trapped." Another 2 blistering attacks saw all but the Greyjoys and a few captains being lit up by the flames, since none could escape the large swath of flames. The massive beast then turned and began burning everything else that it had in its sights. Men ran as women shrieked, the thralls turning to ash in the wind as they were burnt in an instant. A crash. The beast had landed as it roared its fury. "Hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I think the lot of us have something to discuss." Naruto sneered from the saddle of his dragon. "You dare attack T." A Ironborn went to say something witty, but the rider of said beastie had pulled out of a dagger and threw it at the man, impaling him in the throat. Victarion and Asha drew their weapons and charged at him. However, a snarl filled the air and a blast of flame burnt everything before him away. The many Ironborn lords were dead within seconds. That left only Theon now, who had nowhere to run as the flames had completely surrounded him. "Who are you?" Theon asked in terror. Even out here, they had heard tales of the Targaryen queen who had returned, but he didn't know this one. This was a male Targaryen upon the beast whose shadow eclipsed all beneath its weight. "Who I am isn't your biggest concern. You should be worried about the fact your friend fucked up and earned my anger," Naruto mocked. "Why are you here? Why do this?" he demanded, though his voice still trembled in terror. "To cast the judgment upon the Iron Islands that it should have received centuries ago. I'm doing what should have been done years ago, exterminating your filthy race of pirates, rapists, slavers, and murderers." But, we didn't. We haven't." Theon tried to speak, but he couldn't as he teared up at the thought of Robb. "We weren't." "It doesn't matter. There are many people who are still dead because of you and your lot. You may not have killed anyone yourself, but you started plenty down the path that led him to a dark fate. Speaking of," Naruto thought absent-mindedly, before... Without warning, his arm suddenly blurred out, and with it, a dagger quickly slit Theon's throat. Startled, the Greyjoy clawed at his neck, trying to stop the bleeding but to no avail. The last thing the traitor would ever hear was thus: "Redeem yourself in the next life. 0. The next day was spent by the 4 dragons burning the Iron Isles to ash. The Ironborn culture as a whole was wiped out by the fury and wrath of 4 dragons. The word got out swiftly about the precise strike and execution of the former Iron Isles' destruction. Tywin Lannister looked at the letter and fought down a wince. Things were not looking up for his house. Cersei had clearly let the power run into her head, and he couldn't restrain her for much longer. Aegon the city was all but surrounded by the various armies who wanted not only his head, but the remaining members of his house, lynched for the war, and he was fast running out of options. Dorne all but wanted his head for the rebellion. The North was after vengeance for the Red Wedding. The Vale wanted the Lannisters wiped out to a man for letting Gregor and Lorch off their leashes on them in the Riverlands. Storms. End was infuriated over the accusations surrounding his grandchildren, something of which he found impossible as Jaime was celibate for life upon taking the oath. The Iron Islands gone, rendered so much ash by dragonfire, courtesy of the Mother of Dragons. The Eyrie was up in arms, joining their forces with that of the Norths to wipe out him and his legacy. As he was the head of House Lannister, he was in charge of the Westerlands as warden. Highgarden was also joining the fray over what happened to House Tyrell, and the destruction of House Tully left only 4 houses in the Reach that could reign over it as the lords and wardens. For now, he had to pass the information he had learned of to Cersei, and hopefully get Jaime up out bed and stop feeling like a spoiled child. How little Tywin actually knew the Tarleys had returned to serving House Targaryen, the wagon train secured and burnt up to prevent the robbing of the Reach. House Tarley would survive. 0-0. Returning to Dragonstone, Aegon had everyone leave the room so he and Daenerys could speak in privacy. I noticed back in the Iron Islands you had gained control over the dragons. Won't ask how, as that is your business. He stated, however, that horn. We need to do something about it. We can worry about that later. The Queen responded, as it stands. We nearly lost the dragons well. I nearly lost mine as yours seem to have some form of immunity. It's the blood magic. I bound Aegon to me in a manner that would ensure those horns, if they should ever appear, wouldn't hold sway over him. Aegon told her, the people of Ashai have dragons. They don't use them to wage war often, but they do when they have to. Peaceful place. Nice scenery. Aegon reminisced, unlike this land. Their magics are unique and special, and I am glad that they were willing to help me while I was staying there. He smiled softly, the memories playing through his head. Both good and the bad alike. Yes, you mentioned that. Daenerys nodded. Is there any way for our enemies to know that this horn could be used in such a fashion? As long as they don't see it, I am sure we have nothing to worry about. Aegon shrugged. To be honest, I don't know. But that's just me hoping. And what of the Northerners? She questioned. I say we bring them in for another talk, Aegon remarked with our heads cooled off. I am sure we can come to a beneficial consensus. He nodded. Summon them to the central chamber. I will handle the next leg of talks to ensure we have peace. You mad? Daenerys balked. Just a little bit, he smirked, pinching his fingers together jokingly. She laughed and kissed his cheek. Well, it was a twist. The horn worked, but not as it was intended. The Ironborn are all gone too. Will wonders never cease. Well, should this remain a story? If so, I'll endeavor to update it weekly with the rest. If not,